Y- Okay, once again, thank you for this invitation, Satya. It's my pleasure to be here with you guys. You know, I have very good friends in both in all the chapters, you know. When you asked me just to prepare something for compare both edition, I put some slides together, you know, and hopefully I hope I address your requests here, you know. Okay, in terms of content, I had just include here. It's important just to have a retrospective introduction, you know, on the handbook. I will discuss also handbook updates, you know, comparing both editions 4 and 5. Also, you know, one of the most important uses of the handbook is set certification. So I will remind some interesting topics related to certification. And now we are an editorial team working on feedback from users, you know. Now it's growing the users of the handbook and just thinking on the to correct in some way the mistakes that in the current edition, and also to prepare the future new editions. It's very important the feedback from users, and at the end we will have question and answer for you. So retrospective introduction, you know. I think it's important to remind you that our flagship handbook is our flagship product, you know. INCOSE Systems Engineering Handbook reflects or try to reflect, you know, the state of the good practice of system engineering, and generally is updated every 5-8 years. So it's very interesting this slide, you know. It shows the story of the handbook and the system engineering standards, you know. In the upper left corner, you can see the evolution of the standards. And in the lower left, the origin of the handbook. It began aligning in 2000, as you can see on the slide, with the standard 632 from ANSI, you know, and with the arrival of ISO 15288 in 2002, the handbook started aligning with this standard 15288 from 2006 onwards, you know. On the right-hand side, to the present today, we see a clear alignment between the handbook, the SEBoK, and the ISO standards. And when the new version of the ISO standard or the handbook is released, they are now developed in synchronization. So at a glance, I will try to show you that develop a new version of the handbook is a huge effort. This slide show you the 4 years for version 5 and with the different phases. But at the same time, I will try to highlight here the figures, the most important figures in these 4 years. So, I mean, we tried to follow this time assistant engineering process, and we are starting trying to gather inputs from the stakeholders, you know, And that's why we started in 2019 with a survey, involving CAB, working groups, fellows, and the certification training providers. So with this information, we produce the requirements from these inputs, the needs, and also we work with different internal stakeholders to produce the current architecture and the design of the new version. And that's why we produce the so-called top-level requirements, and that's why we produce the stakeholder requirements, the handbook requirements, the author requirements, and the handbook architecture and design requirements, Once we have these top-level requirements, we engage over 100 working group and senior subject matter experts, were engaged. So I was the one leading the inputs from this community, more than 100, and that's with these inputs. We circulated the top-level requirements with them, and we capture the initial draft version of the different sections. We integrated all of them, and then after that, we have a first prototype, and we have a first review. We have more than 200 reviewers, and we capture more than 1,000 comments, and we follow an editorial process to clean up the comments and make decisions on just to accept or reject these comments, After that, we produce a new version, a more mature version, and we have a second round for review. And once this version was enough mature, we started working in 2022 with the publisher, Wiley, just to start working on the final edit, review, updates, and approval of the contents with the publisher. And it was in 2033 when it was released, it was published, the new edition at IS 2023. So the driving stakeholder requirements, due to in this initial survey, we have a lot of needs and inputs. We use YAMA, is a well-known tool for requirements. And with this tool, we produce these top-level requirements documents. But the driven stakeholder requirement was this one, the System Engineering Handbook requirements. And here we can see that the driven stakeholder requirements were essentially these ones, reflect the state of the good practice in system engineering defined by the INCOSE working group where applicable, consistent with the international standards, include the mature topics of the SEBoK. I'll explain a little bit further in detail what is the difference between SEBoK and the handbook, and why here I'm saying include the mature topics of the SEBoK. Include other relevant good practice like textbooks, articles, update all the reference that we have in version 4. Align the handbook with the ISO 15 to 88. At this point in time, the ISO started working on the new edition, you know, and that's why also we work to align the contents of the handbook with the SEBoK, working with the editorial team from the SEBoK, and also aligned with the rest of INCOSE products. Also, the edition 5 should serve as the basis of the INCOSE certification program SAN as usual. Also, other important point was to be domain industry independent, but should show guidance for different domains. That's why we include one important section to address the application domains later. You know, the problem we have in the past is that the background of our SEBoK, the handbook, was mainly based on aerospace and defense domain, you know, and also be country culture independent. And that's why in the editorial team, we were invited not only editors from the Americas sector, you know, we were in both also editors from EMEA, like me, you know, and also from Asia, Oceania, you know. And also, other important point is just a reasonable side, you know, appropriate treatment of the system engineering topics based on relative importance, equal treatment of similar topics. For example, for ELITs, try to use the same space in the handbook and cover the fundamentals of what a certified system engineering professional should know. And also, instead of including content from our INCOSE products, try to reference them and try to engage the system engineering community. Yes, if they want to learn further on specific topics, instead of be part of the content of the handbook, try to engage them just to get these products from INCOSE. Okay. It's very important at this point in time just to know what is the difference between the two different INCOSE products. That is the System Engineering Handbook and the SEBoK. You know, that's why just here I try to do my best just to compare both products. You know. In terms of the purpose, you know, handbook represent the state of the practice of system engineering, and SEBoK represent the state of the art in system engineering. In terms of sessions in the handbook are aligned with the work of the INCOSE working groups and contributions from subject matter experts. And in the case of SEBoK, you know, sessions consist on short articles summarizing existing or emerging concepts or practices. With respect to update frequency, you know, handbook is updated every 5 to 8 years. And SEBoK, you know, updated at least twice a year. In terms of alignment, handbook is fully aligned with the ISO 15 to 88 and current standards. And in the case of SEBoK, as I mentioned earlier to Toton, you know, is try to be align with the handbook and therefore with the current standards at the same time. So in terms of certification, certifications in general, handbook serves as the primary reference for the INCOSE ESEP certification exam, and all the answers to the INCOSE ESEP certification exam are found within the handbook. And in the case of SEBoK, is not directly tied to the SET certification exam. In terms of academic use, the handbook is the official reference textbook for INCOSE recognized academic equivalency programs. But in the case of SEBoK, primarily is a resource for general knowledge dissemination, not only academic use. So in terms of format availability, the handbook is available in electronic format, PDF, and print formats. And in the case of SEBoK, available as a public wiki and downloadable PDF format. In terms of authors, primarily INCOSE members in the case of the handbook, and also may include contributors or subject matter experts from organizations with signed MOUs with INCOSE, like IEEE, etc. And in the case of the SEBoK, authors can belong to any organization, of course, recognized or endorsed by the editorial team, but not limited to INCOSE members. In the case of the content focus, handbook describes key process activities performed by system engineers and a wide range of fundamental system concepts and that broaden the thinking of the system engineering practitioner. And in the case of the SEBoK, is broadly informative, less rigorous, and to summarizing all our new content and practices based on reviews of current academic and not academic publications. That's why it's called a state-of-the-art publication. In terms of the publication ownership, handbook is published in the name of INCOSE, in this case by Wiley, And in the case of SEBoK, published as a collaboration between CERC, that is the System Engineering Research Center in the States, IEEE and INCOSE. And in terms of the editorial process, the handbook is published by an official publisher, is Wiley, on behalf of INCOSE, with a strict editorial and review processes, In the case of SEBoK, it's less rigorous editorial process, although we have this process because we have an editorial team, but it's more focused on dissemination and exploration of new emerging topics. Okay, let's move to handbook updates. Key changes in 5th edition. We moved from 10 chapters in 4th edition to 6 parts for better organization and clarity, from 2-column to single-column formatting to improve readability, less process-centered and more model-based. We also move to include tailored approaches for methodologies, for system types, and for domains. Improve visuals. And we work a lot, try to improve the visuals. and also expanded topics that are not included in 4th edition. Fifth edition remains aligned with 15 to 88, but moves away from a heavily process-centric approach. You know, it was an important debate at editorial team, try to not repeat again a handbook that all the chapter essentially were based on explaining a process, you know, and it was the case for 5th edition. So with respect to 4th edition, you know, we remove all the session, the topics related to SEP certification. We remove the function-based system engineering, all the session related to integrated product development, IPD, and the session related to ENC, electromagnetic compatibilities, also mass properties. We remove the high-speed train case study, also all the reference to competency models for system engineers, you know, and also reference to older standards and frameworks. And also we reorganize the life cycle processes into a single part, the part 2. We reduce the functional flow block diagram session. And also we condense a lot the specific verification techniques like inspection, demonstration, testing, and analysis, you know. And also it's important to mention that in the 5th edition, the IPO diagrams, the input process output, were revised to be more information-centric, better aligned with the model-based system engineering and digital engineering practices. You know, in the 4th edition, inputs and outputs in these IPO diagrams were treated as a unique to each process, which led to a rigid representation of work products. The 5th edition now refers to, let's say, typical inputs and outputs rather than unique ones. And work products are treated as information items that can serve as inputs and outputs across multiple processes, even within the same process. The typical input and output now in the 5th edition are consistent with the ISO 33060 when possible. Okay, let's move to the structure of the 5th edition. As I mentioned, we have now 6 parts. Part 1 provides an overview of system engineering, its importance, the foundational concepts, and its relationship with system science and system thinking. Part 2 covers the life cycle terms, approaches, and the processes involved in managing a system throughout its life cycle. Part 3 focus on quality characteristics, you know, also the engineering analysis and methods to ensure robust system design and evaluation. Part 4 discuss how to tailor system engineering practices for a specific context, including methodologies, system types, and domain-specific application. For Part 5 explore system engineering competencies, relationships with other disciplines, digital engineering, the transformation of system engineering and its future, and also emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Part 6 presents real-world examples of system engineering application. Okay, This is the contents of the 5th edition, the parts and all the sessions. Let's move to the ones highlighted in green that are, let's say, the new topics, including the new version 5. And let's move in detail on each part to explain a little bit more what is new and the added content. In part 1, we add 1, 3, 4 session, system innovation ecosystem. And this session introduced the 3 top-level system boundaries, system 1, system 2, and system 3, and these concepts come from the MBCE Patterns Working Group and detailing the broader ecosystem within which system operates. Session 136, System States and Modes, is a new session detailing the definition and management of system states and modes, including transitions and associated conditions. Session 141, uncertainty, discuss approaches to handling uncertainty in decision-making, modeling, and risk analysis throughout the system lifecycle. Cognitive bias highlights the impact of cognitive biases on decision-making and the need for structured approaches to mitigate their effects. Session 143, that is the one for system engineering principles, and 144 for system engineering heuristics. Both are a summary of key principles and heuristics derived from system engineering practice to guide effective decision-making and system development. We move to part 2. Here we have only one green highlighted session. That is the one on technical reviews and audits, is 214. Introduce the structured methodologies for conducting technical reviews and audits to ensure compliance with requirements and quality standards. Also, it's important, this part is the one where are encapsulated all the processes, from ISO. And in the session 235, we rename architecture definition process to system architecture definition per ISO terminology. And this content now refines the process of defining the system architectures aligned with the terminology and practice with the ISO. We move to part 3. We have here a new session on loss-driven system engineering, 3113. It provides a systematic approach to identifying, analyzing, and mitigating potential losses in systems throughout the life cycle. We have also a new session related to traceability, 323, dedicated session emphasizing the importance of maintaining traceability from requirements to design and verification. Also a new session focus on architecture frameworks, 325. And this session introduced best practices for leveraging architecture frameworks to design and analyze complex systems. And the session 326, patterns, explore the application of design and behavioral patterns in system engineering to reuse problem solution, like building blocks in the design, you know. We have just include a new session 327, design thinking. Introduce design thinking as a human-centered approach to problem solving in system design. 328, biomimicry. This session introduced natural system encompassing living and non-living system not created by humans, and contrast them with engineered system, the primary focus of the handbook, as you know. This session highlights biomimicry as a practice that draws inspiration from nature to address human design challenges. We move to part 4. In this part, we have all those session 4.3x are focused on tailoring, and we have those one by system type, you know, that are span on tailoring guidance for specific system types. You have here, for example, greenfield clean-ship systems, brownfield legacy system, commercial off-the-shelf costs, or software-intensive systems, you know. We also have 4.4x, you know, sessions, tailoring by domain. It introduced domain-specific tailoring guidance for industries. You know, we in the past in version 4 we have some tailoring by domain, but just here we have new biomedical and healthcare systems, commercial aerospace systems that are related to aeronautics, you know, and oil and gas systems, power and energy systems, and telecommunication systems, you know. In part 5, you know, the main focus is on system engineering in practice. That's why we have a lot of green new sessions, you know. 5.1 is focus on system engineering competencies. Yes, in this session, we added the INCOSE System Engineering Competency Framework. In 5.1.1, what is the difference between hard and soft skills, you know? We had just include what is the difference between these skills for system engineering practitioners. 5.1.2 is related to system engineering professional competencies, is a subset of the system engineering competencies, is an enhanced content on professionalism, added professional competencies from the handbook, as I mentioned earlier. 5.2 is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. 5.3x are sessions related to the relationship between system engineering and other disciplines. So we have just include the relationship with software, hardware, project management, industrial engineering, and operation research. Also, here a new session, 5.4, related to digital engineering. And this new session tried to introduce concepts such as digital threads, digital twins, to align with the growing trend on digital transformation in engineering. 5.5 system engineering transformation, explore strategies to modernize system engineering practice, focus on adaptability to changing technologies and markets. And 5.6 is session trying to explain the internal project FUSE, Future System Engineering. And that is, is an ongoing initiative and is a research effort and shaping the future direction of the field. Part 6, we have just included a new case, case 5, in session 6.5, introduce a case study involving the failure of the artificial intelligence based autonomous vehicle, providing lesson learned and also best practice for handling safety critical systems. And also session 6.6, other case studies are you can find additional case studies. The link, in this case is the SEBoK, where we have there a lot of studies that the handbook try to engage you just to visit those case studies. So that's all in terms of let's say the new information we can find within the handbook. But I put here some slides just to highlight that the most important use of our handbook, of course, we have users that also the handbook is reference for practitioners in general, not only system engineer, non-system engineering practitioners as well, and organization. But the most important use of our handbook is the SEP certification. And you know that since March 15 March this year, the INCOSE SEP Knowledge Exam and INCOSE Academic Equivalency Program is exclusively based on this new edition, 5th edition. Anyway, if you have any question, I would like to share with you the email from the certification office, those that you are interested on a specific impact on certification issues, this 5th edition. But it's important also remind you what is certification, certification is a formal process whereby a community, in this case INCOSE, provides a formal recognition that a person have achieved competency in specific areas, demonstrated by education, experience, and knowledge. That's why these 3 pillars are the ones where our certification is based, education, experience, and knowledge. So let me also remind what is the value of certification for organizations. Formally recognize the system engineering competencies of your professional staff, can provide a discriminator for your proposals, can be used as part of the hiring and promotion process, provides an independent external assessment, encourage employee participation in continuing education. For individuals, as you know, formally recognize your system engineering competencies, provides a discriminator for your applicants, provides a competitive advantage in your career, provides a portable system engineering and designation that is recognized across industry domains, and also participation in continuing education indicates your commitment, to personal development. And for your teams in your organization, allows the team to level set on system engineering content and activities, help establish a common system engineering language for your team, helps break down geographic boundaries, organizational boundaries, and cultural boundaries. Okay, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, you know, the handbook was published in 2033, and now the users of the handbook are growing, you know. So at this point in time, for the editorial team, it's very important the feedback from user. So far, you know, we have now important feedback for those chapter, most of them from EMEA, you know, that translated the handbook, you know, and working on the translation help you to understand areas of improvement or even mistakes, you know. Now we had just captured a lot of feedback from the Spanish chapter in the Spanish translation, from the German chapter and the French chapter, you know, and also hopefully very soon from the Chinese, you know. But now I would like to take this opportunity that to mention here that comments and suggestions from users, not only those ones that are using the handbook for preparing the SEP certification exam, these comments and suggestions are welcome, you know. Here you have the email, you know, to send your comments, you know. As you can see here in the appendix G, is the format what the editorial team expect your comments, you know. So I would like to propose you that you have any suggestions, send us an email, you know. And I think it's all I have for you, you know. I don't know, you have a question or
Satya, do you want to say something, or
no,
should I
go ahead, Tom.
Okay. Well, I think this is the time or the opportunity for you to ask questions to Bernardo. So I share my screen. I'm just going to put this on, and you know, you feel free to unmute and pose your question. Or meanwhile, while maybe you think a little bit, maybe I can ask something. Bernardo, I often get the question, you know, how shall I read this book? I mean, is there any thought that you would, you know, provide if you want to access this book, and what is the proper way to read it? It's a handbook, so it's not probably, you know, you don't read it from normally from chapter 1 till the last chapter, but any thoughts on how it could be used?
You mean read the first time the handbook, or in general, you know? You know what is for you know, when you read the first time the handbook, you know, I think for me it's very important to understand the structure, you know, the focus of the different let's say parts, you know. But I recognize that when you read the first time the handbook is a bit tricky, let's say. I mean, you need to have some background, you know, to understand some of the topics, you know. I think one of the most difficult part of the handbook is try to be consistent all the parts, you know, and try to explain with rigor, but at the same time to have in mind that this material, you know, essentially is for preparing an exam, you know. So I think is my recommendation is that read this handbook, you know, when you have a clear idea of the structure. And for me, is the first part one is, I think, is essential, you know, to know these concepts, you know. Part one is key, you know, is where is defined what is a system, where is a hierarchy, what is all the essentials, concepts that in all the parts will be used later.
Yeah, I mean, it's my also impression that part one, it seems like, trying to get you in the mode and thinking of like a systems engineer,
Yeah.
system thinking, and then actually goes on to, I mean, what do you actually do? I mean, part two maybe it's more focused on, I mean, as some processes, and then it goes on with, what are you looking for in systems? In part three, and part four and five is almost how do you apply this thing now for different systems and domains. But as I said, probably part one is the one that sets the foundation from,
Yeah. Yeah, I think anyway, and I'm the one in INCOSE that in the future, we need to increase, let's say, the system mindset, in the handbook, as you look at the section system science and system thinking is a very short session, That's why I think what is the different system engineering compared with other engineering disciplines, is essentially system thinking, But you are right. I think part one is the foundations, and I think you read the first time, the handbook, and the main focus should be to understand these concepts and principles,
Anybody else out there who would like to unmute or write something in the chat?
I haven't said anything in the chat, but if someone is willing to say anything, just open the mic and speak out directly to the speaker.
I think other important point here, I have just read now in the chat, is that when we decide just to develop an agnostic handbook, and we include just one session for application domains, our idea was just to engage some working groups to produce specific products on the adaptation of the handbook of these application domains. This is still an ongoing issue, but I think it's good, because each domain, and each industry have a specific topics to be addressed, But I think this is still a pending issue, and this is something that we would like to engage technical operations to work with different working groups to have very soon, let's say, some kind of analysis, on the specific to, let's say, healthcare, automotive, etc.,
Yeah. We have a question here which actually relates to a bit of my background here on the picture, the Systems Engineering Vision 2035, because here is the question from Natasha about what emerging shifts in systems engineering are the working groups seeing that could influence updates in INCOSE Handbook version 6. So I guess my question extends even then, is there a coordination here with the vision document as well?
Yeah. I think our vision document is very, very interesting, because there we address a lot of important topics. When you come back to the handbook, that are not addressed there, I think now in the new version is an opportunity to address specific topics that are, let's say, emerging topics in system engineering that I think represent the future, you know. That's why when you discuss as member of the editorial team with the different working group, you know, we have some working group that are more traditional, let's say, a strong working group, you know, with a lot of influence on the contents, you know, but I think we should try to do our best to address specific topics that are key now in the present, you know, like digital engineering, even the topic I mentioned earlier, the system mindset, modeling and simulation, these kind of things, I think are key now, you know, in the practice of system engineering, you know.
Yeah, considering the evolvement, the evolution of AI, I think it's going to be quite an interesting challenge here to you know, keep up with what's happening. So
yeah, I remember I was attended a webinar from Barclay Brown, and I'm surprised what the initiatives that he is involved. You know, you can produce XML diagrams with AI. You know, and they are working with Chat GPT. You know, try to you upload a diagram, and Chat GPT could provide you with a requirement. You know, from the diagrams. You know.
So where do you see the role of the handbook then in this context? What can it bring and still be relevant, so to say? You know?
I think there are a lot of topics that are very relevant, you know, and I think some of them are not easy to address in version 5, but in this new update, you know, and in both also in ISO, in the review of standards, and the ISO standard are trying to address now some of the topics we are discussing earlier, you and me now. And that's why I think it's very important to be captured in the handbook as well, you know.
Okay, I guess we're getting close to the hour, but here's a question from Anoop. What was the ambition behind adding diversity, equality, inclusion, and DEI, which is nowadays more discussed in political systems?
Yeah, well, it's good questions, you know. Sometimes some of the session, I would say, are included due to the internal policies of INCOSE, you know, and that's why in this case, you know, we include these contents due to is one of the session recommended by the board, you know. But if we want to address, repeat me the question, the last question, Tom.
Well, it was more, I mean, why, I guess, the reason behind having the DEI section. And I mean, I certainly would, in my own opinion, think that this is really, I mean, what systems engineering is. It is looking at things from different angles. We need diversity. We need, you know, everybody's opinion. We need to include different, you know, and that's really, if we're going to stay innovative, I think this is what we need. And so as we, you know, always talk at looking at things from different angles. So
yeah, I think
even if you don't need to look at it politically, I mean, I think even technically it makes sense.
Yeah, you know, one of the, you know, you need to see the problem not only from a technical point, from a different technical points views, you know. is also cultural issues, you know, that influence in the decision-making process in the design, you know. So that's why diversity is key, you know, in system engineering, of course, you know.
Okay, so maybe wrapping this up, there was, I don't know how really to pose a question, but there's a comment in the chat here, how much the 5th edition has covered the topics such as agile, way of working, project management, and for example, AI applications, or the interface to, I think, to these kind of principles.
Okay, well, you know, we improve also in terms of project management to include content related to the interface between system engineering and project management, you know. In terms of interface, you know, is also important, and also this content was improved because even including in the architecture process, you know, when you define the architecture, the interfaces essentially is the result of the connection, you know, in the architecture, you know. So what I want to transmit here is that the result of the 5 version we have today, it was the result of let's say 4-year discussions, you know. Sometimes I have questions when I go to present this same presentation to different chapters or different communities, and someone say, why you made this the decision to address this topic instead of the other one, you know? And sometimes it was not a simple decision, you know. It was decision, even we have some kind of competition between different working groups, you know. And the editorial team tried to balance, you know, in some way different views, you know. And that's why I know that handbook is a product, it's an important product, but nobody is happy with the result. I mean, because the requirement working group would like to see the whole handbook focus on requirements, you know, and the other one maybe focus on agile, you know. So, well, it's not an easy task.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what system engineering is. It's all about a trade-off, finding a compromise that works best as a whole. So actually, I think I'd like to just tell everybody that this will also be available, at least as Satya said, it will be mailed to those that are in the chapter list, but also you find it on the Swedish chapter portal here. Before we leave, maybe Jens, you want to just make a little promotion because you're on the list here.
Yes,
You know,
sure. So first of all, I would like to say thank you to everybody for joining here. We saw like 36 participants on the call. That's quite a lot. And a thank you to you, Tom, for facilitating the Q&As. A thank you to Satya for actually taking the initiative to this cross-Nordic event, you can say, Scandinavian. And thank you, of course, to you, Bernardo, for taking
Thank you, Jens.
time to go through this update.
Yeah. So
that was really nice. And taking the engineering tour, you can see here we have. Go ahead.
Thank you guys for this invitation.
And you're welcome. It's really nice to have you here and kind of get a reading guidance to what to anticipate when you jump into something you already have read. So I think that's really nice. And yeah, next coming up here, that will be the Nordic Systems Engineering Tour. And you can see it's in June. It's approaching quickly. And Sweden is a big country, so you have it tried, right? Jönköping and Stockholm. And we often in Copenhagen see people from the southern Swedish part. So you'll be very welcome here. And the Danish chapter also will disseminate this recording, probably by a newsmail, but at least we'll put it onto our web so you can find it.
Okay.
So
Right.
thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you,
Satya.
and happy Easter to all.
Yeah, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe stop the recording and then we can